The HOA standoff. I never imagined my quiet life as a part-time farmer and researcher would erupt into a full-blown clash with a suburban homeowners association. Yet, that's exactly what happened during my second summer at Willow Creek Estates. On the surface, Willow Creek was a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood. Neat houses in muted tones, manicured lawns, and an HOA obsessed with regulating mailbox colors and shrub heights. The realtor had warned me the HOA was strict but fair. I should have trusted my instincts when I heard that. The fair part, I soon learned, was questionable. The heart of the conflict was a 30-acre farmland I owned, leased to the Department of Agriculture for experimental crop research. My grandfather had bought the land 60 years ago, long before the suburbs encroached. I inherited it, and, since my research job kept me traveling, I leased it to the USDA for sustainable farming experiments. It was a perfect setup. The land stayed productive, the government advanced its research, and I covered property taxes with the lease payments. That is, until Sandra Mitchell, the new HOA vice president known to neighbors as Karen, behind her back decided my farmland was an eyesore. Her relentless campaign against it escalated from petty complaints to an outrageous act, installing an electric fence on my property to block me out. Her plan backfired spectacularly when the USDA got involved, leading to a legal showdown that brought serious consequences for Sandra and the HOA. This is the story of how one woman's obsession with control nearly derailed vital federal research and how justice prevailed. The roots of the conflict. My grandfather bought the farmland when the area was just rolling hills and a small farmhouse where he and my grandmother lived. As the city expanded, developers turned the surrounding land into Willow Creek Estates, a cookie-cutter subdivision. By the time I inherited the property, the farmhouse still stood near the farmland's edge, and I moved in, unaware of how much my neighbors would scrutinize my land. The farmland, 30 acres divided by a creek, was leased to the USDA for testing drought-resistant soybeans and water-efficient wheat. USDA scientists in marked trucks visited occasionally to collect soil samples or monitor irrigation. Some neighbors found the farmland charming, giving the area a rural vibe. Others, especially the HOA, grumbled from the start. "Why are those government trucks driving through?" they'd ask. "That tractor's too loud after 5 p.m., or the farmland lowers our property values." The complaints were minor until Sandra Mitchell took over as HOA vice president, flipping my world upside down. The first encounter. 3 months after a long research trip, I met Sandra Mitchell. I was sipping coffee on my porch when a tall woman in a crisp blazer marched up my driveway, clipboard in hand. "I'm Sandra Mitchell, vice president of the Willow Creek Estates HOA, she declared, her voice sharp. "I'm here about your so-called agricultural activities." I stood, offering a handshake she ignored. "Can I help you?" She thrust a paper at me. "HOA bylaws citing non-residential land use. Your farmland might violate our guidelines on commercial enterprises." I raised an eyebrow. "The farmland predates your subdivision by decades. It's leased to the USDA for federal research, not a commercial farm." Sandra's lips pursed. "We haven't seen documentation. If you're profiting, it's commercial, and the farm equipment disrupts our aesthetic standards." Trying to stay calm, I explained, "The farmland isn't under HOA covenants. You manage the housing lots, not my property. I can provide the lease details." She sniffed. "We'll see. If it's tied to your residence, it might fall under our jurisdiction." She turned and left, leaving me uneasy. Escalating tensions. Over the next weeks, Sandra bombarded me with letters. Noise complaints about USDA tractors, odor complaints about mild fertilizer smells, and aesthetic violations over irrigation lines she called unsightly cables. Each threatened fines. I responded politely, reiterating that the farmland wasn't under HOA rules and the USDA complied with all regulations. County officials confirmed my land had a separate deed outside the subdivision's covenants. Still, Sandra persisted, inventing new accusations. She even claimed chemical runoff in the creek, triggering a state environmental inspection that found no issues. The farmland was a model of sustainability. But her scrutiny slowed USDA research, frustrating their scientists. Behind the scenes, Sandra rallied some HOA members, warning that my farmland threatened property values. A few neighbors bought into her fears, worried about pesticides or property lines. Others told me privately, ignore her. She's always stirring trouble. Ignoring Sandra was tough as her complaints intensified. The electric fence. One Saturday, I woke to a shocking sight. Metal fence posts lined my property's boundary facing Willow Creek, with workers unrolling wire. Confused, I approached a worker. Morning, he said. We're installing an electric fence for the HOA. On my land. I asked, stunned. He checked his clipboard. Work order from Willow Creek HOA. It's to prevent unauthorized entry due to liability concerns. Furious, I demanded they stop. The supervisor showed me a check with the HOA's letterhead. We're just contractors, he said. I called Sandra, who answered smugly. Yes, I authorized it. The board voted. Your farmland poses risks. People could wander into our community, or kids could play near your fields. You can't fence my property without permission, I snapped. That's your opinion, she replied. The boundary's ambiguous. We're ensuring no farmland activity spills over. Official surveys proved I owned a buffer zone between my land and the HOA lots. I rushed to the county recorder's office, where a clerk confirmed the farmland was outside HOA jurisdiction. Appalled, she helped me file an emergency injunction. By afternoon, the fence was up, blocking the main entrance used by USDA trucks. Electrified warning signs hummed ominously, forcing us to use a longer, muddy dirt route that was nearly impassable for heavy equipment. Sandra's email to the neighborhood claimed the fence would protect our children and preserve property values. She threatened trespassing charges if I removed it. USDA's response. 3 days later, USDA scientists arrived for soil sampling but found the gate locked and electrified. Dr. Laura Bennett called me, confused. Did you install a security system? We can't access the field. No, that's the HOA, I sighed. I'm working on a legal remedy. The team drove 5 miles to the back entrance, navigating a muddy lane that delayed their work by an hour. The fence also risked disrupting a wildlife corridor critical to the USDA's habitat preservation study. Its high-voltage design, meant for livestock, posed safety hazards. I pushed for the injunction, and a county planner, Mr. Thompson, offered to mediate. At a tense community center meeting, he presented maps proving the farmland was separate from HOA authority. Sandra countered with a dubious private survey, claiming the boundary was unclear. Thompson rejected it, but Sandra insisted the fence stay for neighborhood safety. The meeting ended in stalemate, with legal processes dragging on. Federal escalation. The USDA filed a formal complaint with state and federal authorities, naming Sandra and the HOA for obstructing a federally leased research site. They documented lost research time, increased costs, wildlife risks, and safety hazards from the fence. The complaint demanded its immediate removal or an access corridor. Neighbors panicked, fearing legal fees from a federal lawsuit. Sandra doubled down, emailing the community that the HOA wouldn't be bullied by federal overreach, and suggesting the USDA needed an HOA permit. The fence's issues grew. Sandra had hooked it to the community's power grid via a faulty junction box. After heavy rain, it short-circuited, scorching turf and alarming families. Dog walkers reported sparks, and parents questioned the high-voltage system's safety near homes. Sandra dismissed concerns, blaming faulty wiring but keeping the fence live. The breaking point. The situation exploded when USDA trucks arrived with heavy equipment for soil analysis but were blocked by the electrified gate. 2 security guards, hired by Sandra, demanded an HOA pass. Lead engineer Dr. Emily Carter argued, "We have a federal lease. Your pass is irrelevant." The guards refused to budge. After a heated standoff, police ordered them to stand down, letting the trucks through after a 2-hour delay. The incident hit local news. Willow Creek HOA blocks federal agency. Sandra slammed the police for overstepping, but residents turned against her, fearing legal costs. At a contentious HOA meeting, board members challenged Sandra. "You didn't tell us about an electrified fence," one said. "This could bankrupt us." Sandra dismissed them, vetoing a motion to deactivate the fence. Residents left furious, some vowing to remove her. Legal battles. With county support, I filed a lawsuit for trespassing and property damage, backed by surveys, photos, USDA statements, and neighbor accounts. My attorney, Daniel Harper, sought an injunction to remove the fence. Sandra's lawyers claimed disputed boundaries, delaying resolution. Meanwhile, the USDA's federal complaint gained traction, with the Department of Justice eyeing charges for obstruction. Neighbors rallied behind me, urging me to fight. Sandra escalated, flying drones over the farmland to film USDA equipment. I caught her operating one from her backyard. "You're trespassing by airspace," I warned, filming her. She denied it, but stopped after I reported her to police, who warned her against further flights. The USDA protested the surveillance, citing privacy violations. Sandra's downfall. Sandra's final act was trespassing onto the farmland, filming USDA equipment, and trying to open a locked container. A technician caught her, and a federal officer restrained her for tampering. Deputies arrested her for trespassing, interference, and attempted vandalism. The HOA removed her as vice president, issuing a public apology. The DOJ charged Sandra with trespassing, obstruction, and violating court orders. My civil suit sought damages for fence removal and USDA disruptions. At trial, evidence emails, videos, surveys overwhelmed her defense. The judge condemned her actions, sentencing her to 8 months in jail, probation, and restitution to me, the USDA, and the HOA. Legal fees forced her to sell her home, which was foreclosed. She left Willow Creek in disgrace. Aftermath. The HOA reformed, limiting board power and creating an oversight committee. The farmland resumed its role as a USDA research hub, advancing sustainable agriculture. Wildlife moved freely, and the community settled into peace, free from Sandra's crusade. Today, Willow Creek's homes stand alongside my fields, where USDA scientists work quietly. The saga remains a cautionary tale. Sandra's attempt to fence others out caged only herself.